Good afternoon. Welcome to this part of the conference today. We've had some fantastic sessions already, and I'm delighted to have Dr. Martin Valenti, Head of Climate Enterprise and COP26 for Scottish Enterprise. Martin, welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, James.
Great. We had a fantastic presentation just now from Robert Swan, Polar Explorer, and I took a couple of things away from that. One, how brave stroke mad you have to be to walk to one pole, let alone both poles, even multiple times. But also he gave a quote that really said that it's not someone else's problem to solve. And I guess that's a sentiment that when it comes to climate change and net zero resonates quite strongly with you.
Extremely strongly. I'm old enough to been living and working in Scotland for a long time in a number of different sectors, and every sector I'm in, somebody thinks it's the other sector's fault for solving climate change. You know, if only businesses would do more. Well, if only governments would make better policy. Well, if only banks would lend on these things. Well, if only the public would invest in the big changes we're trying to do. But you know what? And it's something that we need to knock on the head early on in this conversation, is this is not a problem for somebody else to solve. This is our opportunity, and our meaning every single person on this watching it, and people who may watch the recordings at some future date. It's not just a problem for us to solve, it's a major economic opportunity for us to explore. And you know, like the speaker you were mentioning there, we can all be explorers, we can be adventurers, because, and I want to be melodramatic as I can here, is that the planet depends on a successful COP in Glasgow in 255 days time from now. And we have to be bold and fearless and relentless in our pursuit, because if we take time to sit and think about who can I find to blame for climate change, it's game over. We need to change that attitude to who can I find to help me deliver some ideas, and who can I help in their particular journey. So I think we need to get that idea about this is somebody else's problem to fix out of our heads quite early on, and then focus on what it is that we're going to do together.
Absolutely. And you mentioned 255 days to go, and with the exception of coronavirus, COPs happen every year. So why is COP26 so important now?
It's actually really exciting saying this, because I never thought I'm 60 this year. I know I don't look at it, that's what I hear you thinking there. But and I've been involved in either reading about climate change, getting lessons about climate change, teaching about climate change, figuring it out, watching the scary movies, seeing the world leaders like Attenborough and Mark Carney. And here we are now with just 255 days to show the world that we can actually do something quite significant. As the numbers suggest, there's been 25 that have gone before, 24 of them abject failure, nothing happened. The conversations were prevailing. The prevailing conversations were about, what do we have to lose for tackling climate change? What do we have to give up? And you see that a lot these days, about climate change is sold as this, you know, miserable existence where you can't have fun and love and prosperity and well-being and so on. And it's very much, we're going to have to give up things to enjoy climate, to maximize our input for climate change. Well, no, we don't. So let's be smart about how we look at climate change. So 25 COPs, 24 of them failed. One worked, COP21 in Paris. And it worked because Christiana Figueres and a group of other amazing leaders got together and said, we're going to change the narrative. We're going to discuss, what do we have to gain by tackling climate change? And how do we do that in a way that allows us to transition at a pace that suits every country? So you weren't getting countries around the table saying, you're bad, you're good, your economy is wrong, ours is great, you need to change yours, because that's just combative. We've been far more collaborative in approach, and Paris was the ultimate collaboration. However, that was 5 years ago, and since then we've had Donald Trump, we've had climate deniers, we've had global pandemics. You couldn't make it up. But the one thing I would take from it is what it's taught us, COVID, and it sounds glib at times trying to sound optimistic about COVID, because it's been horrific. I mean, absolutely horrific, and hopefully never going to have to live through it again. But it's taught us that we can make changes, that governments can make bold decisions, and people can take drastic actions in their life. And then we start to value, and you hear this a lot, James, people starting saying, I just desperately want to go walk in the woods and just listen to the birds singing. There's something about nature that's taken us back primeval to what used to be really, really important to us. Not all like gadgets and stuff and things. It was just about being this kind of human living with nature in an ecologically balanced way, not miserable, you know, an ecologically balanced, exciting way. So COP26, to answer the question, is that one final chance that we have for mankind. This is the one, because COP27 is going to be held in the African states, and Scotland is far more capable. We give the world the economic system, the enlightenment. That Scotland's a country that's had innovation deeply in our veins and our DNA for decades. This is our chance to pay back the first three industrial revolutions and a kind of wonky economic system about pursuit of GDP. So that's why Glasgow is so important, and it's very exciting.
Absolutely. And I think the COVID crisis has shown us that maybe as a race, we're not quite as in control of our destiny as we thought we may have been in the past. So, but you must be encouraged by the US coming back in, China declaring 2060. So, I mean, how important are those two declarations to the success of COP26?
They're critical. They're actually critical because the US is seen as the kind of, and this is going to sound odd, that China is seen as this unusual force over in the East doing things and doing them either really well or really unusually, or sometimes private and sometimes a bit less clear. America, everybody knows about America. There's every soap and game show and HBO box set is all America. So there's something about us as in the West looking at America as to say, well, you should be leading this agenda. And then, of course, 5 years ago, Donald Trump pulled out and said, you know what, I'm not going to do this climate stuff because therein lies madness, because it's natural and it doesn't really make sense. And I'm sure none of us on this call are going to indulge in any of that nonsense, because I certainly am not going to waste my time trying to convince people that gravity exists, right? So the man has made a drastic impact on the environment. But I think back to the really important point of your question is Joe Biden now could be the POTUS that delivers climate change on a global scale forever and set us in that trajectory. And why I think that is that he has to demonstrate, and we can help in Scotland and Glasgow, he has to demonstrate that an ecological, environmental pursuit for an economy delivers prosperity. And that's how Donald Trump won. He said, look, this chasing endless, emission reduction means you're not going to have jobs here, you're not going to have jobs there. And people went, actually, that's true. And it worked. And it's still working to a degree. So optimism has lost out to outrage. What we need to do is switch that, James. And I think this is why it's so important that Glasgow COP shows Joe Biden, his administration, China, and every other country that this is the country that can balance an ecological, an environmental, and an economic system all into that same space, because with one without the other two just doesn't work, and it's not worth it.
Great. And I think lots of people clearly hear of COP, there's increasingly amounts of discussion around it. I think, the average person, it kind of becomes a bit of a black box after that. So, and it's difficult to understand some of the finer detail of COP. But what does good look like for COP26? What comes out of the end of it that means that it's the second COP to be a real success?
Yeah. It's obviously the agreement in the last 3 or 4 days. That's when the horse trading happens, and that's when world leaders are eyeballing each other, going, I'm not going to chase after this unless you do, or I'm only going to go after half of it. And it's quite a lot of it's smoke and mirrors, to be quite honest, because they've already made their decisions before they go to COP. The discussions at COP is to make them think, well, actually, there seems to be a bit of a vibe here that maybe we could get on board with. Now, the beauty of that is that COP is split into the blue zone and the green zone. The blue zone is where the governments and administrations of government and the ambassadors and these people get and discuss the agreements. And that's fine, and that needs to happen, and it's important. But the really good stuff, the cool stuff, our stuff, happens in the green zone. And the green zone provides this ambition loop. So the green zone is where everything that happens is about optimism, hope, business, academia, solving problems, well-being, nature. And the idea is that the green zone becomes that conscience, and people in the blue zone, the Bidens, Boris Johnsons, and so on and so forth, will be looking, going, it sounds like they're up for it. It sounds like businesses have got this agenda. It sounds like investors are looking for green investments. And it actually sounds like the public are up for big change. And by the way, COVID has taught us, you, me, to think a bit differently and think about what's really important. And by the way, it's not more stuff. It's just about different things in different ways. So I think success, and you and I should meet up if we're able to in November the 13th and toast a glass of wine and say, Scotland, Glasgow provided the global agreement that demonstrated that an ecological, environmental, and economic success was the same thing. That triple bottom line you hear a lot of people about, as defined by John Elkington and those really, really clever people. It's not mythology, it's real.
Absolutely. And what are some of the things that you think will need to be in that agreement to really make the difference after COP26?
Well, Paris's success was the agreement to limit, emissions to 2 degrees, to make sure that we didn't get, horrific outcomes and so on, but actually try and aim for more for 1.5. I would love to see a global agreement on limiting all global greenhouse gas emissions to 1.5 at the absolute least. But I would also love to see, this isn't just about governments, and it's a point we mentioned earlier about this isn't just government's fault or problem to fix. They've got a very important role, but it's not the only role. We have a role. And so I think the important thing is going to be this culmination of government saying, we're up for it. We now know what's really, really important. We understand the businesses and the investors are looking for that sort of transition to net zero. And 128 countries in the world today have a net zero target, which is unbelievable. Scotland's 2045. I'm sure all of your listeners will know that. England and the UK 2050. Some other countries are 2040 and 2035. Now, the trajectory is clear. It's the pace that's going to matter now, which is why we speak a lot about the race to zero. Which country, which nation is going to get there first? Grab all that IP, sell it internationally, develop all those solutions, socialize them internationally and globally, and it's not just about history. Of course it's not, but history is good, isn't it? Wouldn't it be good if, grandchildren of ours and sometime in the future were reading about Glasgow COP and the fearless attitude of the Scots coming forward with global climate solutions rather than what's happened in the past? It's just turning up at a COP with a list of problems that somebody else should fix. So that's our opportunity, James.
Fantastic. We've got a question coming from Benjamin, which I think strays into the political arena, but it says, Westminster's made it very clear that they don't want the Scottish Government to have a seat in Glasgow. How optimistic are you that genuine examples of environmental leadership in Scotland will have a voice at COP26?
This might sound, excuse me a sec. I've not seen any evidence of the UK government saying that at all. It's maybe just some press being a bit provocative, but I deal with the UK government every single week. And we are all of the same opinion. What's good for Scotland is good for the UK, is good for every other country in the world. So whilst there may be fake spats with this government and that government, we all need to rise above that. Because this isn't just about governments and political point scoring. This is about our very way of life on Earth, And I know it sounds a bit dramatic again. A lot of what I say sounds dramatic. It's dreadful, but we are speaking about the most important critical moment of our life. So we deal with the UK government and the UN all the time. Every week we've got a call and we speak about what do we think we should do? How do we showcase that? When can we speak here? Now, bearing in mind that the blue zone is the UK government and the green zone is the UK government, but the Scottish government have influence in there. And by the way, it's going to be very difficult behind Scotland when you've got 200 world leaders in Glasgow. And one of the things that we maybe talk about later on is I'm really, really pushing hard and I'm trying my best to try and expand the green zone so that it becomes all of Scotland. Because I'd love to be getting some hydrogen buses from the likes of Alexander Dennis and anyone else who's willing to offer them, he says. So that we can pick delegates up and take them to where Scotland is solving these problems, take them to the Mitchell and Scotland Innovation Park, take them to the Halo and Kilmarnock, take them to some of the great projects we're seeing across the country. So that's my plan.
Excellent, and I think that's one of the things I'm certainly learning about COP as a newcomer to it is, whilst the blue zone is very much around negotiation and government delegations, the green zone is a festival which people are looking for people to come along and showcase whatever they're doing, and I'm guessing, people doing little things is as important as the moonshot things of people inventing the game changer silver bullet technology that's going to help solve the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the narrative that will be played out at COP, world leaders, investors, and so on are there with their ears open, looking around to see which nation, which business, which organisation, which system is bringing forward net zero transition faster and in a just way. I'll maybe speak about just transition later. And in Scotland, we're predominantly SMEs, as you know. We've got lots of big, fantastic businesses. Well done. Please stay with us. But we've got an amazing, vibrant SME society and micro businesses. And I'll mention a couple. Ardbeckie Distillery. You know, you've got some businesses out there that are just saying, I think the world needs net zero gin and carbon positive gin, so I'm going to make it. So they didn't wait on government saying, we think you should do this and we think you should do that, because that's very savvy. You know, businesses that see the net zero opportunity as a mountain rather than a cliff edge, and I'll explain the difference. A cliff edge is certain doom, a mountain is very dangerous, but it's something that people rush towards. You know, you look at mountains and you think, you know, I could probably do that, and the endeavour is going to be amazing, but I'll do base camp 1, 2, and 3, I'll maybe get some Sherpas and we'll work together, and your heart leaps. What we need to do in Scotland is we need to view net zero 2045 as the worst case scenario. I would love to see it 2030, 2035, and only if businesses can say, we're going to go for it, and we're going to go for it relentlessly, and we'll get it wrong time and time again, but that doesn't matter, because we're going to be fearless. Suddenly you'll see people in the blue zone going, we better watch, because these are people who vote us in, these are the people who pick governments, and they're already way ahead of us. So do we try and incrementally improve a system that these people don't want anymore? So that's my cautionary note to governments, is that everyone's up for big change, and you guys either need to make it happen or get out of the way. So it's a polite kind of message for government.
We've had a question coming from Faisal, which is talking about, if you've got, he's saying, how do you get involved? What's the best way for a company with a contribution to make to get involved?
Yeah. I shared with Scott and others earlier a list of information that hopefully you'll be able to publish on your site somewhere.
It'll be on the website, yeah.
Answers that question. So if you're a business, if you want to go and do something at COP, feature, sell some products at COP, provide the coffee, whatever it happens to be, there's a link there and it takes you to, it's like the cabinet office in COP. So you ping that to them. Granted, they will be getting thousands. So my suggestion would be to make your bid stand out. So just going to say, Ardbeckie, I'll go back to that distillery again. Not that they sponsor me or anything. I don't even like gin, to be honest. Anyway, that's another story. I do like whiskey, by the way. Is that make your story stand out? Make it when the people who are doing the triage go, oh no, this sounds fantastic. The world needs to know about this. So don't just pitch in a bid saying we think we want to be at COP because we just want to have a platform. Explain why you want to be there, and explain why it's important for the world, and explain why it's important for this particular COP, and why it's important for Glasgow. So, I mean, I could write every single business in Scotland's bid. I haven't got the time to do that, but maybe SBC can help provide that kind of level of support. And it's amazing you've got Gavin Tweedy and people like that now. So that's an invaluable resource.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess in the context of net zero, as important as COP26 is, it's just a milestone along the way. It's not you do things for COP26 and then do something different afterwards. I guess it's just an opportunity to showcase what's happening, to learn, to collaborate along the way. But it shouldn't be the end game, or things shouldn't stop after COP26.
I saw that comment there. It's just 12 days in a year, but it's 12 really important days, because those 12 days you could 200 world leaders sitting around a table looking at what's possible, and we need to show them what's possible. And after those 12 days, we then need to crack up action even 10 times more and get on with it. That's the point for me. The showcase and opportunity, the pivotal historic moment won't be lost on people here for COP is really important, and your business standing out at COP is going to be fantastic for your PR, etc. But from now, today, right through to COP, and then right through to we actually hand COP to Africa in 2022. So what we can't hand them, and no offense to any people from Spain here, what we can't do is what Spain did to us in Madrid COP. They said, here you go, Glasgow. We didn't get it right. Can you just figure it out? Oh, and by the way, there's probably going to be a global pandemic. It's going to happen as well. So talk about the pressure is on Glasgow, but I'm confident that if any city in the world can pull COP out of the bag, it's Glasgow.
I may have got this wrong, but didn't the COP in Madrid open with a statement saying we're not going to agree anything in this?
Yes. Talk about setting out your stall. It's like me giving my wife a Christmas present saying you're not going to like this, but you know the wrapping paper's lovely. It's a really important point, though, James, and I'm being a bit jovial because that's my nature, but this is really serious stuff. The world's in a bad place. You know, if everyone in the world lived like we like living in Scotland, such as our way, We need 3 planets, and the last time I checked, it was just the one. I think I'm on safe ground scientifically here. There's just the one. So that's a massive over demand and supply, and any business knows that demand over supply is not a good thing, right? So at some point, there's payback, and we're starting to see payback now with global temperature shifts. The last 800,000 years, if you see these charts, and there's fantastic charts you can look at from Ed Hawkins, these stripes you'll probably see all over COP. And the last 5 years are the hottest 5 years in history.
Yeah.
And, so everything's now pointing to us to say, wake up, grow up, take responsibility, act responsibly, go on with it, and don't be worried about getting it wrong from time to time, because we're going to have to go, and we're going to have to go together.
So if COP26 is a success, is the world going to feel different afterwards? Should we expect it to be different, I guess?
Oh, I think we can more than expect it. I think we can. If you think about what COP, it looks like the headlines look like emission reduction, and we're going to agree to global targets. But see all of the other negotiations that go on between the different states, like African states and Asian states, and a lot of these, and I haven't got time to get into all the details, but a lot of them come up with like sub deals and subplots and sub plans. Some of them are about, like sub-national continents agreeing to do stuff on the Iceland, for example, or they're going to do stuff on child poverty. There's so many brilliant negotiations. I mean, you never actually get the chance normally to get all those world leaders together in the room speaking about making history. So when you got them there, the chances are they're all, and don't quote me in this, but they're all kind of looking to see who's going to come up with the coolest story. That is your opportunity from a sales point of view to say, here's your chance. This is your moment. Why don't we get a group of world leaders, 10 of them together, and Scotland could set this up, another suggestion for Scotland, and we're going to tackle climate justice. We're going to make sure, because the industrial revolutions that we were behind caused the greatest problems in the places that have not benefited from that industrial revolution. So you just need to look at some of the sub-Saharan states in Africa. They're the people who suffer most from flooding and drought and so on because of our prosperity. So wouldn't it be great if we actually started to say, well, our ambition for COP is to be this prosperous, well-being nation, but we also want to solve some of these climate and justice problems that we brought about. That would be a great little other side global agreement for me.
Yeah, and I guess it's easy for us in developed economies to think it's about us cutting emissions, but the majority of the world is still on an economic development curve. So it's about helping them develop without some of the simplicities of digging up coal and burning it that we've had in the past as well, isn't it? So this whole concept of a just transition, I guess, is fundamental.
Just transition is critical. It's probably, in fact, different cities who have had COPs in the past have an identity. Copenhagen is called Hopenhagen, but it turned out to be Floppenhagen, which is just a shame for them. And I have friends over there, and they always say to me, Floppenhagen stuck. What does Glasgow want to be known as? When this is finished, is Glasgow that dear green place that we all dearly want it to be? Could it be the city that socializes this ambition about not just being a better place and better lives and better outcomes for people, but how we help other states and regions and other cities similar? And Glasgow's got a great relationship with Pittsburgh and Santiago. So you're already getting that kind of relationship about hands across the ocean, helping each other and supporting each other, which I think is really, really important in this. And I would love Scotland to be not just getting a big tick saying, well done, you've saved the planet, but look at how you've saved the planet. You've done it in a just way. You're not deciding the winners and losers. They can make the decisions themselves. If a sector that's hell-bent on fossil fuel exploitation, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, if you pardon that pun, that they're going nowhere. Their ultimate future is demise. What's the point in having a successful business on a dead planet? So a lot of these businesses at this moment, and we've got amazing companies like Wood, companies like that, who are hell-bent on a sharp focus for a just transition, and Doosan, Babcock. So you've got some amazing businesses in Scotland that are leading that just transition. That, for me, is a hugely exciting, specific narrative for Glasgow.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I guess it's a new term to me. I think it's emerged is the concept of global south over the last few months, and I guess everything that we do here, we have to have a watchful eye on how that could support or help or include the people that are in the global south. Yeah.
Well, we're very smart people, aren't we? I mean, we've managed to solve so many different problems, and we've got a huge spirit of adventure, as your earlier speaker was exhibiting. can we bring those together? Can we bring a spirit of adventure and a fearless attitude for innovation? Can we just now focus on solving problems rather than listing them and putting a compliance system in to make sure that it doesn't get worse? Seriously, is that the best we think we can do, is just stop things getting worse? So there's something there, I think, that SBN and Gavin and yourself and Scott and Russell and all of the amazing people can think about doing, is we need to get our mojo focused on being absolutely completely committed on that. Yes, there's problems. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's going to be tough, and it's not going to be easy, and we're going to get it wrong, but we are going to be relentless. That's today's word. If someone wants to tweet that, we have to be relentless in our approach for climate change, because it is in our watch. This is up to us. We can't defer this to somebody smarter, younger, and fresher at some point in the future. This is that, Obama famously said this, that when he was the POTUS, we're the first generation to see the impacts of climate change in front of us, and that was the Hurricane Katrina and all of these things. And we're the last generation that's going to be able to solve it. So we can't kick this down the line for someone else, James. So it's up to us. And I mean, all of us.
I think was it John Kerry said recently, this is COP26 is the last best chance we have to solve it. And my understanding is if we don't hit the 2030 target, we don't hit the 2100 target. So the next 9 years is fundamental to achieving the end game.
Can I just give you a tiny bit of hope on that? Because that does sound quite kind of doo-doo-doo, right? And it should, because it is very serious. But Scotland, you, us, together, what we managed to do in the decade 2008 to 18 is we cut emissions and grew our economy faster than any country in the G20. So that's a staggering statistic. But what that should show us, and what should make us believe, is that we can do it. We can do it. Our energy transition has been second to none. Of the rest of the world looks at Scotland going, your transition to your green energy transition is the textbook. It's fantastic, and there's amazing people that have been involved in that for a long time, and that wasn't easy, because these were the people that used to sit at meetings chatting about renewables, and people would go, yeah, we'll get to that later on. And the funny thing is that when I used to speak from, like SEPA with businesses, they would say, SEPA regulator, I'll get John from compliance to speak to you. I'm going, I don't want to speak to John from compliance, with respect to John. I want to speak to Julie from business development, because I want to speak about how do we develop your business in a way that works within environmental constraints, because thousands of businesses are doing it. Millions of organizations are not just pivoting to net zero, they're jumping on it. And again, John Kerry will be on the eye for businesses in Scotland that he can then import back to the States. Think about that for a second, because he has to have his boss, Joe Biden, solve the problem of economy or environment. Because if we don't, in 5 years' time, Donald Trump will be back in that seat, or someone very similar. And that's not a prospect that keeps me happy, I must say. Personally speaking.
I'm going to take the fifth on that one, I think, Martin.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think the key thing is again, you hear some of the challenges, and people talk about investment, people talk about money, and my guess would be that there's plenty of money for the right investment opportunities. It's about creating that first, rather than saying what we need is to know the money's there and then we'll create the right investment opportunities for it. I don't know your view on that.
I think I made that promise to myself. I think it was maybe 2 months ago. Some people who may follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, I do apologize for my rants, but I promised myself then that every single day I'm going to post something, a reason to be hopeful. And every single day, and the last 5 or 6 have all been investment related. Scottish Widows last week announced 170 billion pension pot, which is hungry now, looking for that new investment that's going to get social license, and it's going to get them right into that net zero transition. Otherwise, they just become, the passengers. I think there's a lot of organisations like Aviva and Standard Life, and you just take your pick. The BlackRock, Larry Fink's letter every year to the BlackRock, all of the world, all the CEOs saying, waking up, it's time to get involved in net zero. Who was one yesterday? Bill Gates was a couple of days ago. So you can't go onto Google or LinkedIn or anything now without seeing optimism spoken about. That needs to crystallise in Scotland. So the answer to the investment idea is that what my call to action is that don't wait till you find the pot of money. Create the initiative, the pot of money will find you. You have to now start socialising your big ideas, your collaborative ideas, your game-changing solutions, and we need to have a pipeline of opportunities, a net zero prospectus, and then suddenly the money will come towards it. And don't just believe me, listen to Mark Carney. Right, so Mark Carney was the former governor of the Bank of England, now the UN ambassador for climate finance, and he said, and I quote, "Climate change may be the existential threat to our way of life, but it's the greatest single economic opportunity ever." And I think we kind of knows a bit about these things. So if someone like that is saying that this is a big economic opportunity, the banks, the investors, and everyone else is looking to get involved in it.
So, no, absolutely. And we've had a question coming, which I think you probably alluded to the answer from Benjamin, saying most scientists and some economists are increasingly arguing that Paris 1.5 can only be achieved through degrowth in OECD countries. And I'm guessing you're saying that's probably not your view.
I'm not an expert in growth. There's people like Jason Hinkle. I did an event with him recently. He's written a book, I think it's called The Great Debate, and he speaks about that. So what you get here, and this, again, I'm not an academic, okay? So they say they've got all sorts of stats and facts and figures and Venn diagrams that can show that. All I know is the facts of what I've lived through. I have seen transition in the energy sector in Scotland, which is staggering, and that came through hard work, not philosophical viewpoints. That came from hard work and a dedicated commitment to push some boundaries and try some opportunities and see what happens. Claire Mack, Chief Executive Scottish Renewables, if you get Claire on a call like this, she's even more excitable than me, and Claire could list you all day long the amount of interest that comes into her team saying, listen, I've got a great idea. I might not make tons of money about it for a while, but I'm going to get on with it. There is this huge surge, this tsunami of ideas and opportunities coming through, trying to access that investment so they can solve problems. And so Scotland hasn't degrown. That's not even a word, I just made that up. Scotland hasn't reversed its prosperity in any way, I would say, and we have halved our emissions. You know, we set targets for 2020 in Copenhagen, remember Floppenhagen, to have we had the world's highest climate change targets from the industrialized world, 42% emission reduction by 2020. And comments like that came on at the time when we were doing these events and saying, yeah, it's not going to happen because of this and that and the next thing. Well, I'm sorry to say, and I know it might upset people, is that this is 2021 and we're sitting at 51% emission reduction, when all of those people said, you're not even going to do 40, let alone 42. So all I can look on is what I've experienced, what I know, not what I've read or not what some scientists may or may not say. There's a reality to this, and you just need to look at a lot of the Scottish National Investment Bank now. That's going to help. They're going to help try and mobilise some ideas. But you can tell I get excited about this, and it's not meant to be condescending to anyone. It's just that I can only speak about where I've worked. And I've worked in the regulatory sector, the government sector, the private sector. I ran my own business, and I see the world from a kind of unusual stance.
No, I absolutely understand it. And just coming on to what we're trying to do with the net zero community is I guess mobilise the smaller end of the economy, and you sometimes come up against what I call the what's the point in voting Liberal Democrat argument there, which is, you know, if I go from 100% to 0%, it doesn't make a difference. But I think my view is it does make a difference, and I guess your view on how even smaller businesses can contribute to what is essentially a large problem, isn't
it? That's a really difficult question, because if you are a small business today, you're sitting thinking about this guy here, this joker on talking about climate change and net zero and opportunity, and here I am with 8 staff on furlough, nothing positive in the horizon, and now I'm being told not only is my business got to be sustainable, it's got to be net zero. What on earth does that mean? How do I do that? Where do I find that expertise? This is tough. This isn't easy. This is tough. This is a mountain, remember. This isn't just a hill you saunter up. This is going to require effort, and it's going to require endeavour, and it's going to require the support. What my job is in the world is to try and bring that support network together. It's just trying to create, you know, collaborations. Yes, there's lots of people that will sit in combat all day long. Knock yourselves out, because one thing I do know is that after a combat, there's casualties. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in collaboration. Who has got ideas that wants to work together on solving problems? Let's get together around a table and see what we can do. And then we bring governments in and say, listen, there's probably a policy lever you're missing here, or an alteration to a policy. Let's have a look at it. And here's why. provide evidence, not rants and placards with down with that sort of thing. You know, we are far more intelligent now than we have been before, because previously, sadly, it was all about circling the wagons and thinking that it was going to get better. Well, if you've ever watched the John Wayne movie, James, you know, there is an ultimate end to that circling of the wagons. You get picked off. So at some point, somebody has to go, let's go that way. Let's be the pioneers. And I'm not in any way being glib and flippant. It isn't easy. It's fraught with danger. But we're living in this time of great volatility and ambiguity and uncertainty. But the one thing you can be certain of is your attitude. That's the point I'm getting at. And businesses have the strongest mental attitude probably of all humans, because they just face with adversity every single day and they just get on with it. And I'd love to see much more of that. And I'm here to help in any way I can.
No, absolutely. And I think framed in the right context, human beings are fantastic at problem solving. So, and given that you're kind of at the centre of the wheel in all of this, what are some of the things in Scotland that are really exciting you in this area?
Honestly, I could list all day long. Every day, I'm sitting speaking to businesses who are just, they surprise me just by the things they're coming up with, the ideas, the solutions. There's a massive big plant, because a lot of them are like non-disclosure agreement type things, but I'll give you the concept. There's a plant that's being proposed in Scotland that's going to solve the plastic problem in Scotland, because some people may or may not know that we ship plastics on containers off to Far Eastern places. You know, it's horrific, right? So we're here all spouting how great it is to be, you know, green, renewable and all that stuff, and we've got ships leaving dockyards heading off with problems that we can't fix. Now, come on, Scotland. That doesn't make sense, does it? You know, so we should be able to say, so instead of looking at these things as waste, we're going to look at them as a resource, and then just get a bunch of entrepreneurs, minded people around a table looking at it going, let's see how we can solve this problem. So I'm quite excited that one big plant that is going to open could unlock a whole circular economy landscape in the whole of Scotland and deal with plastics, from every single bit of plastic, repurposing it back into a value, so that people, you know, bottle manufacturers, I nearly mentioned the name of them there, I slipped up, but these sort of companies now can say, well, let's just have this plastic that used to be plastic, and let's just keep circulating it in the environment. That's the circular economy. Very sensible, and it would be a world's first, and that's going to happen in Scotland. But there's what's happening in the Michelin Innovation Park. You mentioned Faisal on earlier. Some of this stuff, and the thing that excites me probably most, and I shouldn't say it, is the young entrepreneurs. You know, these young ones that are just coming, they don't have all of the, well, what if it doesn't work attitude that we grew up with. They're like, yeah, I'm just going to smash it and I'm going to go. And if it doesn't work, I'll just strip that page out of the book and I'll do another page. They don't seem to have that fear about getting it wrong. And there's something I always remember about my nature, James, and I'll be very brief, is that I'm half Italian, half Scottish. The half Italian in me, when there's a penalty and 10 seconds to go, I grab the ball because I just see the sense of glory. And I think, this is what's in it. I can see that. And then the Scot goes, what if you get it wrong? So that's the nagging doubt in my head. Say, well, what if you get it wrong? And so I think that's something we need to lose. We need to be more like the young entrepreneurs, these people who are fearless. And I think we need to sometimes take a leaf out of their book, if they'll allow us to have it.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I think life experiences can sometimes make us kind of, I guess, rationalize why we shouldn't do stuff based on, you know, where we failed before. But I think it's certainly something that we're striving to do and have to work hard to do, is to get young people in. And I'd like to see young people on the steering group as ambassadors of the community and driving it forwards. And I think following that generation is going to be key to us achieving what we want to do. Can I
at this point plug the 2050 climate group? Somebody can maybe Google that and stick their website on the address. This is a group that was created, you know, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, with a view to helping Scotland focus on what's important for the 2050 climate targets, which of course now 2045, 2050 then. 2050 climate group, have a look at what they do. You will be astounded. This is a fantastic group of young people who've got their sleeves up solving problems. You know, they're not sitting in rooms going, yes, who can we find to blame, and let's make lots of lists about things that need solved. They're just cracking on with it. So if you get a chance, anyone, have a look at the 2050 climate group.
Fantastic, and that's been put in the chat on the side, so it sounds really exciting. So, but
thanks, Scott.
I was talking to somebody the other day about rewilding and offsetting schemes and that, and I guess the link between net zero as a focus on its own and the wider biodiversity. I'm guessing they go hand in hand, don't they?
Well, there's the biodiversity crisis at the exact same time as the climate crisis. In fact, some people, depending on who you ask, think it's worse, because we are in the 6th mass extinction. You know, and that's even saying that, I feel ashamed. It's awful that we have perpetuated what's happening to our natural environment. And you know, thankfully for the likes of David Attenborough and people like that, they brought it into your TVs right in front of your eyes, and everyone that watches those programs feels a bit shameful, a bit sad, a bit upbeat, and a bit optimistic in all those different time frames. So for me, if you think about it, Scotland has this natural asset, or nature, and we've got Nature Scot. We used to be called Scottish Natural Heritage. They previously were viewed as the gamekeepers, right? So their job was to stop things happening there. That's changed dramatically now. If you could look at what's happening in Nature Scot, they are like you. They've got their sleeves rolled up. They're very business savvy, and they're looking at providing nature-based solutions. Because a lot of the hard-to-reach emissions, aviation is the classic point, right? Yes, there are electric planes being designed for short haul, and that's fantastic. And at some point, maybe in the next 10 years, we'll see lots of that. And that's a bit away yet. So do we do nothing until then? No. So why don't we do something? Why don't we encourage airlines and aviation and shipping and some of these sectors that are finding it hard to get those last emissions for the time being, instead of them doing nothing? I don't mean they're doing nothing, but give them an opportunity to invest in nature. We've got peatlands in Scotland. We've got the flow country. We've got biodiversity opportunities all over the place. So I would ask people if you can find Nature Scot's site, nature-based solutions, and have a look at that. And this isn't just a fake, phony plug. These are real. You know, if you look at Brewdog, just to plug one business for a second, Brewdog, James Watt just said, we're going to be carbon neutral. Now, that was it. And what we're going to do is we're going to buy this woodland and we're going to protect it and take care of it and look after it so we can offset and sequester some emissions. It's a fantastic idea. And yes, there's certain words that split a room. Brexit, Marmite, offsetting. Right? I think we need to go over that. We honestly need to go over it and say offsetting isn't a bad word anymore. Offsetting is if used properly through the right channels and properly regulated, it is a means towards an end. And a lot of people don't realise, and you why would you, is that regulations, a lot of business are regulated to a thing called BAT, best available technique. And if you're at BAT, you could just say, well, that's me. I'll just wait until there's another new technique out. Or you can go, I'm still keen to do something. And I'll give you classic examples. Diageo, Edrington Group, some of these whiskey sectors aren't just sitting back at regulation. They've gone way beyond there. Yeah. They're now involved in, you know, amazing schemes for biodiversity and all that stuff. I could talk all day about biodiversity, but this is not really what everybody wants to hear. But my take-home message that I would plead you to look at is nature isn't this thing, this ethereal concept. It's really, really important to us, but it also can help us in the short term provide some phenomenal nature-based solutions, and in the long term. And by the way, it also helps nature if done properly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the two, net zero and biodiversity, go hand in hand, Martin, don't they? So it's not one at the sake of the other, or you know. And I think sometimes the solutions aren't optimal for both sides of biodiversity and net zero, but ultimately we have to look at them in the round, don't we, to make sure we're doing the best that we can.
We do. If anyone's got time, also have a look at Natural Capital, and Scottish Forum for Natural Capital. So that's a group maybe Scott and Gavin can liaise with. I'll put you in touch if need be. That's a bunch of like the Forestry Commission, SEPA, SNH, these organisations, Nature Scot, sorry, all getting together, the Woodlands Trust, and they deeply understand that nature-based solutions, and the Scottish Forum for Natural Capital would be a great ally for the great work that you guys are looking to do.
No, absolutely. And it's certainly one of the ambitions that we have is to put the demand together to create things like offsetting schemes, you know, rewilding projects that actually companies can benefit from the credits for, but actually Scotland in itself and the wilderness actually happens as well. So I think trying to get that done by creating the demand to support that is one way of doing it.
Yeah, there are some good schemes. The Woodlands Trust, and I can't remember all of the details. That's not my expertise, but I know that they do exist. There are schemes whereby you can get involved in some schemes around the Woodland Trust and people like that, and the Peatlands Trust, I think. But that's predicated on this understanding is we have 600,000 hectares or so of peatlands in Scotland. 80% of it is degraded. Yeah, 80% of it is still to be protected. So that's a lot. So that requires a lot of money. So if we continue to proceed to protect it in the same pace we're doing, it's going to take about 300 years. Now, I don't know what your definition of an urgency is, but that doesn't seem right. So what we need to try and figure out is how do we properly, providing the safeguards and our expertise and our knowledge, which I've listed all day that we've got loads of, how do we make a system work that can help solve that problem? Because if peatland's not protected, it dries, it volatilizes into dust, and that's carbon going straight back into the atmosphere, and that's very dangerous. So the peatlands that you drive by when you're looking at them and you think that looks like a bog, that's gold dust, and Scotland has kind of a rich abundance of it, but it needs protected. That requires investment. So you're right, we do need to think about natural capital investment. Again, there's lots of experts I'm sure you've got on this that know that stuff lots. So maybe again, another suggestion is for your website and your support for members is, all you want to know about natural capital and nature-based solutions. I think that would be really helpful.
No, absolutely. So you mentioned before 255 days to go. I'm assuming that your work days are only going to get busier over that period of time. So I guess I'm talking on behalf of everyone on the call. How can we help you? What are the things that help you to make your job easier?
Well, when I heard about Gavin's appointment, that was the first. I actually whooped. I think I whooped in the house, right? And I thought, this is amazing because, it is tough. It's a tough gig going and sitting with businesses. And again, in the context of COVID, and speaking about hope, because they're going, that's all very well for you for hope, for your public sector wages sitting in your house and, and blah, blah, blah. But look at what I'm having to do. And I totally understand that. But hope is the exact thing that we need at this moment. That's the light at the end of the tunnel that's going to make us focus and get to where we need to be. So having the Scottish Business Network and other partnerships like Business in the Community and all of these other great organisations, Zero Waste Scotland, all in the same space as best we can, selling hope. Hope mobilises, fear paralyses. If all we hear about Climageddon, no wonder our young people have got anxiety. No wonder they're sitting, chinning their fathers and mothers, going, what the heck what were you guys thinking of? What is all this about? So now's our chance, James. This is the really, really important point I want to make today, is that we are so fortunate, you and I, and Scott and others. We are living at a time where every single thing we do makes a difference. That wasn't the case for our parents, and it probably isn't going to be the case for our children's children. This is the history making year. And that's what we need now, is we need people like Scottish Business Network to take a whole chunk of the Scotland's businesses and guide them, steer them, support them on that net zero transition. Because if we do not reach net zero by 2045, I can't even describe what our economy will be shot to pieces. Our well-being will be horrific. Our place in the world will be gone and lost. And that thing about place in the world is important to me, because it's important for me, as I'm sure it is for everyone on this, is that we don't just become, make Scotland great again and become really, really successful and everyone else is in a bad place. That's not what we should be doing. That's why I think this climate justice is a really important opportunity for us. We want to transition in a just way, and we want to be able to give back to the world some of the things we gave it that they didn't ask for, which was emissions, which was drought, which was flooding, which was forest fires. So it's payback time. And we are the people who should be paying that back, I think. So
I absolutely agree. And I think it's part of the next phase of the community's development is looking for some ambassadors, some champions that will take up the torches, if you like, accept that there are challenges and difficulties. I mean, we were talking with some people before and said, I think one of the power company's parents has invested in some CCGT in Mexico. So should that power company be involved in the community in Scotland? And you kind of say, well, yeah, but if you did that, where do you stop? You can probably find some reason to exclude everybody. And I know you and I touched on it just before this call, but it's not how we got here. You should understand it, but it's actually, what do we all do now? And my view certainly is, I wouldn't exclude any business, any sector who wants to make a positive contribution from being part of the community.
I think Italians invented this with mea culpa. None of us are without blame. And we're not going to be a nation that denies the prosperity that we got from the Industrial Revolution. We have a fantastic education system and a health system. Where did all that tax income come from? How do we? how do we develop the sort of way we've developed? We're a very, very smart, savvy nation, Scotland. You know, I'm really, really proud to be Scots. The things that we've done, the things that we will do have been fantastic. But what do we do next is what matters. Do we take the greatest single opportunity of our lifetime and squander it by arguing with each other about who to blame and nitpicking which business has got the wrong font size in their thing and all of this greenwash allegations that's going to go around? Yes, that's important, and there's lots of people that can identify it all day long and try and find who to fight with. I'm not doing that, James. I don't have the heart for it. I just want to find people who want to support each other rather than fight with each other. So I know some people might take umbrage to that because, yes, it's really tough and it's challenging. Yes, I know that. I've been doing it for 40 years. But I sense a change in the air. People are now saying, let's just roll up our sleeves, work together. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater like we did with the coal sector. We don't like you anymore. You can leave. Oh, hold on. What have we done? We've just condemned thousands of little Scottish villages and towns into, we've ripped the heart and soul out of them. They've got no society anymore. Certainly got no jobs, and they've got intergenerational unemployment. That's not a sensible thing to do. So we have to make sure that this just transition that we passionately believe in helps solve those sort of problems, and we're never to repeat the problems of the past. So less combat, more collaboration, please, Scotland.
Absolutely. And if I make a short pitch for the community, that's exactly what we want to try and do is there are challenges, there are problems, there's history, but what we really need is solutions and people working together. And as I said, I think people's ability to solve problems positively when given the right context, I think is amazing. And I think that's what makes me most excited is it's about getting people inspired and focused and then just let them do their thing.
So at that point you mentioned there, I don't know how close we are to finishing, but I might have time to say this. So I call it Tale of Two Princes. So there's The Prince, the book that was written by Niccolo Machiavelli. And he would try and persuade you to do something he thought you should do and then persuade you that it was your idea. So that's classic Machiavellian nature. And again, some Malcolm Tucker, and if you ever watched The Thick of It, was very Machiavellian, right? And then I think about Anton de Exupery, who wrote The Little Prince. So that's the other book. And he would try and inspire you to do something. So there was manipulate, which might work, but not always, and inspire you. That works. And I'll tell you why, because so Anton de Exupery said, if you want to build a ship, don't assign tasks and don't ask people to collect wood. Teach them to yearn for the endless immensity of the open sea. And once they get that vision in their head, that spirit of adventure, they go, that's what I'm having. I'm probably going to need to build a boat now. Suddenly, people yearn for the living that they create in their vision, in their mind, in their heart, and they understand what the values are of it. If you just say to people, you need to cut your emissions by that, and it's very binary, they'll go, okay, where you go? I'm not interested in that. It's tough out there. What you're trying to sell and what we need to sell, and again, you've probably heard it a few times today, hope. We have to sell hope. This is our chance. And to use a football metaphor, we may be 1-0 down, but we're just 2 goals away from victory. And we cannot ponder about why we lost the goal. That's a distraction. The distraction is who do we blame here? What's the problem? What we need to say is, I kind of know what the solution is, and I need your help. So let's get it done. So that's my plea to the network and to everyone watching this, is that after this, find someone else on that chat line and say, I was reading your website, I've got some fantastic ideas. Let's get together over a virtual coffee and get some stuff done. And then SBEN maybe could do something at actual COP itself. Maybe we should have a big event in COP, and you should be socializing the 50 best collaborations. Did I say 50? I meant to say 100. The 100 best collaborations, and let's just have a showcase and say, we did this as a business network in under a year. That's a really inspiring message for other businesses who are going, well, actually, it is tough, but look at what these guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that certainly that's our plan, is to have a showcase. We want some fringe events that showcases Scottish business, but also, because of the nature of Scottish Business Network, is that we can actually show how Scotland influences and impacts on the world away from Scotland as well, because that's one of Scotland's biggest legacies for sure.
Because I just saw one of the messages pop up there, and it was from Jimmy Johnson, and that's a name that resonates with me for another reason. And it was saying he's got some great ideas. So I am a friend of SBN. If there's anything I can do at any time, if we want to have one of these every week, I'll do it. I guarantee it, because we have to build momentum, and we have to build hope, and we have to build trust, and we don't get involved in well, it's difficult and it's challenging. Just let other people go and do that, right? Just let other people go and try and, you know, I'm not interested, right? My message for us at Team Talk at halftime is we're going to win this next half. And I'm not interested in why the ball went in the net. And that's a dreadful metaphor, but you know what I mean? But let's not waste time worrying about what didn't work. Let's focus on going that way. That's my big message.
No, absolutely. And we've got a few minutes left, and I think you and I are both fans of Margaret Mead in terms of how you can make a difference. So I guess that's you could probably say the quote better than I can.
Oh, actually, James, I think I'd like to hear it from you. You've got a far more eloquent voice than me. Over to you, James.
Yeah, it's the principle. Martin and I were chatting. We both realised we were fans of Margaret Mead. Is and I'm going to horribly misquote her, so forgive me this, but essentially it goes, never underestimate the ability of a small group of focused, motivated people to change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, and I think that it certainly speaks to the fact that if you do just ignore all the challenges and focus on the solution and just put the enthusiasm and the effort in, and you look back over history, that's what's made a difference. Waiting for other people to say it's big business, it's the government. And I presented to a university last week, and they said, well, the government should do more. And I said, well, the government's decarbonised the grid by 60% since 2013. Oh, I didn't realise that. Well, they should do more now. So this thing about not offsetting or assigning responsibility away has to be the key to getting this to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, and to Margaret Mead, well done, you got it spot on. It's the only thing that will work. So don't anyone be under any illusion after this, really enjoyable chat and say, well, actually, that was interesting, but it is them to blame. It isn't. This climate change is interconnected. It's the Matrix, if you've ever seen that dreadful movie. It's the Matrix. So there's no one size fits all. There's no one solution. There's no one agency. There's no one business going to solve this, not even Bill Gates, right? That isn't going to work. What needs to happen is a collaborative, unfragmented, bold, and absolutely endless sea narrative, not sticks and stone, an endless sea narrative. And who's telling that story? On the one hand, you've got Greta telling us it's Armageddon. So who's the counter Greta? Who's the opposite from Greta? Is it you, James? Is it Gavin? Is it Russell? Is it Scott? Is it all of you? Is it Jimmy Johnson? You should be out saying, yes, it is tough, but that's fine, because we're not feared. Sorry, that's a Glasgow word. We're not afraid. We're going to go for it, and we're going to go for it big, and we'll get it wrong, and that's fine, but we're not going to stop. And my approach is proceed until apprehended. This is your chance to make a big difference. You will never get it again, and that's a fact. COP doesn't come back to the same place. It's never going to be back in Scotland or the UK again. And there's something you should note there, is that Glasgow is the first ever city to host COP, which isn't the capital city, and it isn't the host city. It's strange, isn't it? Because normally the UK government, whack, London, job done. No, not even Edinburgh. Interesting. Glasgow. Why? Ask yourself that question, right? So ask yourself the question, why Glasgow? I've got the answers and I know why, but I'd like you to mull over that and think, wonder why COP, the most important conference of all time, is in the city of Glasgow. Because the answer is in all of your heads right now. I'm sure of it. So I see lots and lots of questions. I don't know how we managed to get to many more of them before our time's up. We could be here for hours, James.
We could. We'd probably need some Scottish single malt if we were going to carry on for much longer and be able to get that virtually around the group that we're here.
Well,
so,
my wife's name's Isla. I had to marry somebody that had a connection with whiskey. So,
well, hopefully, it's one of the things that leverage the Scottish business networks is the Scottish whisky sector is doing so much for sustainability that it would seem a shame not to support them whilst we're in Glasgow in November, wouldn't it? So.
Yeah, well, watch the space. There is a net zero whisky being in the offing, so watch out for that. But we launched a whisky back in 2009 for Copenhagen. Remember the one I mentioned called the 2020 whisky, 42% proof? I've got a bottle. Not supposed to have it and we gave it, and the First Minister at the time was giving it to world leaders who copied Scotland by going to 40, 42. The only person who got one was Angela Merkel, because they were at 40%, and I think he gave one to Arnold Schwarzenegger because California was at 40. So, and it's something about using our identity. The Scots aren't doers, we're doers. I think that's what we need to start claiming up. I just made that up there. That was quite good, wasn't it? Joking, James. Anyway, we're getting to that giddy point of the evening. It's been a long day.
There's a future for you in marketing, Martin. I can see that.
I'm too old for that game. That's a young person's game, surely. And Kendra and people like that they're the geniuses at it, not me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Martin, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate how busy you are. I think our ambition is to showcase what we can do to build that momentum, and we will be taking a showcase to COP and demonstrating how Scotland can continue to mobilise all parts of its economy. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm sure we will touch base with you over the next 255 days and beyond. But for now, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to us. Well, I'm sure everyone has very much enjoyed it as much as I have.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me, because I am a bit excitable at times, but this is the most exciting period of our lives. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you.